House Whip Steve Scalise joins me now with reaction to everything unfolding on the Hill. Good evening, Congressman. You know, I got to tell you, what's fascinating about this is that it's not just, Stalin-like. The whole thing started when Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama had that reset button with Russia and, with the selling of the Ukraine to Russia. I mean, the Dems have been in the hands of the Russians from the get-go with this Obama administration, so it's no surprise that they would use Stalin-type rules. But what exactly were you talking about when you got on the floor?
Well, Judge Jeanine, you hit the nail on the head. In fact, it's the fact that they are denying the ability for both sides to participate. The Schiff has veto power over witnesses that are brought forward by Republicans. Schiff can literally kick the president's legal counsel out of the room if he so chooses. And in fact, Judge, earlier this week, Adam Schiff directed one of the witnesses to not answer certain questions asked by Republicans. That's the kind of Soviet-style impeachment process I'm talking about, where one side is literally shut out so they can get this false narrative, leaking things out that are later, in many cases, undermined by Republicans that were in the room because Adam Schiff won't open up the room. In fact, 75% of the voting members of Congress are not allowed to be in that room.
Well, you know, the amazing part of this thing is they say, okay, look, now we're gonna open it up. On the day that they say that, they're still in a closed-door hearing. Right. Adam Schiff, the emperor there, has the right to decide when someone should answer a question, whether you can even call someone as a witness. I mean, this is consistent, and I write about this in my book, Radicals, Resistance, and Revenge. They have turned the criminal justice system and the justice system upside down. You are guilty until you prove that you're innocent. And what we're going to do is, as far as we're concerned, you're not going to have the right to represent yourself. You're not going to have the right to prove your case, to cross-examine witnesses. We're just going to go in there and smear you for what we don't know. By the way, do you know what the crime is? Nancy Pelosi says, and I think, by the way, I think we have sound here from one of your colleagues there, Dan Kildee. Take a listen to this Democrat.
The phase we're in right now is the deposition phase, where witnesses are called in to determine whether or not they have any information that's relevant to this case. At that point, we will move into the very public phase of hearings.
You're going to move into the public phase of a hearing? Well, wait a minute. There's something called the fruit of the poisonous tree. When you start the thing illegally, you don't have the right to continue with it and go to the end that you were seeking. That, again, is the justice system upside down. Who are these people?
Right. It's a completely tainted process. And in fact, they're not starting off trying to find facts. There is no crime, as you pointed out. With Clinton, with Nixon, it started with an actual crime that was committed. First, you had the Mueller investigation, where for 22 months they meandered around trying to find something. They thought that was going to be their ticket to impeachment, and no charges, no crimes. So instead of moving on and taking care of the business of this country, they're continuing on because they want to take this president out. They wanted to impeach him from day one. So they started with this so-called whistleblower. As you point out, in fact, even the inspector general said the whistleblower has a political bias. Might have been, from many reports, an actual Joe Biden employee. And so if that bias is there, shouldn't people be able to know about it? But nobody can find out about the whistleblower except Adam Schiff. So they have these closed-door meetings. So literally they're trying to impeach a president, reverse an election behind closed doors. We don't do this in the United States of America. That's the Soviet-style justice I'm talking about.
You know, one of the things that I found fascinating, and I wrote this down, Nancy Pelosi says, you know, we didn't come here to impeach the president. Yes, you did. You started on the first day. I mean, they've been talking about impeaching him from the beginning. They just don't know what to impeach him for. First, it's Russia collusion, by the way, which isn't a crime. They're the ones who were colluding to the extent there was any involvement. And then it was racism, and that didn't work. And then it was recession, but we've got the best economy we've had in half a century. So that was wrong. And now it's the Ukraine. But here's the rub. There is a National Defense Authorization Act. Tell us about that federal law.
Well, Judge, in fact, one of the things that the National Defense Authorization Act from last year requires is that if the federal government gives taxpayer money to a foreign government like Ukraine, the president has to first certify that that country's rooting out corruption. That's what President Trump and President Zelensky were talking about. It's the law. And oh, by the way, Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi voted for that law that requires the president to make sure a country's rooting out corruption before they send taxpayer money. We ultimately sent the money, but clearly there was corruption in Ukraine, and President Trump and President Zelensky were talking appropriately about how to root out corruption, especially corruption as it related to the 2016 Russian interference that happened when Barack Obama was president.
Well, you know, so that's two things. And I ran this on Justice about 3 weeks ago. We have a treaty with Ukraine where we have the right to have our Attorney General, Bill Barr, discuss with them any information, any evidence that involves any kind of criminal activity. That is a law. Then we have Section 1250 of the National Defense Authorization Act, where the president has to confirm, he's required to confirm by law whether or not the foreign government is going to certify that they're cleaning out corruption before we give them taxpayer money in the form of military aid. I mean, come on, how stupid are these Democrats?
Right. And for that, they want to impeach a president. President Trump was actually, and look, there were only two people who participated in this call that all of this is about, the whistleblower and the, witness after witness in secret giving their own version of what they think a call was about. The two people on the call said there was nothing wrong. In fact, President Zelensky himself said publicly there was no pressure and he got the money. There was no quid pro quo. In fact, President Trump was carrying out his duty to make sure that they're rooting out corruption in Ukraine. And he was congratulating President Zelensky on getting elected on a platform of rooting out corruption. Zelensky even thanked President Trump for selling the Javelin missiles, which, by the way, allow them to stand up to Russia. President Obama wouldn't sell those same Javelin missiles when you had Ukraine being attacked by Russia, where they were invading the Crimea. I don't know why Barack Obama wouldn't sell those Javelins. Somebody ought to ask that question. But President Trump did and helped Ukraine stand up to Russia. He ought to get credit for that. With all due respect,
Congressman, I got to ask you, you guys don't fight the way the Democrats fight. You had the goods. When Obama isn't selling what he agreed to sell, and Russia, he's defending Russia while they're taking out the defense system over the Ukraine. I mean, it's frustrating for Americans to watch this. I mean, I know right now you're in a situation where you're fighting for us, but let me move on. Isn't it frustrating for you not to be able to work on the opioid crisis, on the U.S. MCA, all this stuff?
We should be lowering drug. We had a bill, by the way, a package of bills that came out of committee unanimously to lower drug prices. Every Republican and every Democrat, we would be paying lower drug prices today, but Speaker Pelosi's infatuated with impeachment, securing our border, making sure our troops have the tools they need. None of that's getting done because they're infatuated with taking out a president when we have an election next year. Let the people of this country decide that.
Steve Scalise, Congressman, thank you so much.